Have you ever looked at a masterpiece painting, maybe read an incredible novel, or heard music that just moved your soul and thought, wow, I wish I had that kind of creative spark? But, it feels so incredibly out of reach. We often seem to relegate creativity to some kind of elusive genius, right? Like a special gift only for artists.
Mhm.
But what if that whole perception is just, well, fundamentally wrong?
Today, we're going on a deep dive into creativity itself. We're going to explore what it truly is, where it comes from, and sometimes it's from surprising places like boredom or even our deepest challenges. And maybe most importantly, how every single one of us can cultivate it in our personal lives, our work, even through really profound experiences like grief.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to journey beyond those traditional, maybe limiting ideas. We want to reveal creativity as this vital human ability that's actually accessible to everyone. And to do that, we'll be exploring insights from, well, a really diverse stack of sources. We've got things like military strategy, the experiences of celebrated authors, even neuroscientists weighing in. Okay, let's unpack this then. When we think creativity, our minds often jump straight to that lone genius figure, someone touched by, I don't know, divine inspiration. It's this image that's shaped our understanding for centuries. But what if that idea, that image itself, is the very thing holding us back?
It's a powerful point.
Yeah.
And what's really intriguing here is how our understanding of creativity has, evolved over time. Historically, many ancient cultures think ancient Greece, China, India, they didn't really have concept of creativity like we do today. They saw art and innovation more as a form of discovery, maybe, or something that belonged purely to the divine.
Ah, like the muses in Greece.
Exactly, or the idea of an external demon or genius. These were seen as external forces, kind of mediating inspiration from the gods. Human creation itself was considered merely an expression of God's work, not originating from the human. The modern idea, the conception of creativity we grapple with now, it really started to emerge during the Renaissance. And this was heavily influenced by humanism, that movement shifting focus onto the individual human being, putting them at the center.
Yeah.
And this is truly pivotal because really for the first time in history, you start hearing people refer to an artist as being a genius themselves. Not just someone channeling an external force, but the source of it.
Right, so the artist becomes the genius.
Precisely. But here's the cruel irony, the downside. While humanism elevated the individual creator, it kind of trapped them too. That new genius label became almost a psychological cage. It started linking creativity not just to brilliance, but to profound mental instability, even self-destruction. We see this tragically throughout history, especially in the 20th century. So many brilliant creative minds who died young, sometimes by their own hand, or felt, as one source put it, undone by their gifts.
Wow.
Norman Mailer, for example, he said in his last interview, "Every one of my books has killed me a little more."
Gosh, that's intense.
It is. And you certainly don't often hear, say, a chemical engineer say that about their 40-year career, do you?
No, you really don't. That's a powerful and frankly pretty grim side effect of shifting our understanding. So, if that old definition is flawed, maybe even damaging, how should we be thinking about creativity in a way that's healthier, more accessible, and truly reflective of what it is today?
Well, the modern understanding defines creativity more as the ability to form novel and valuable ideas or works. Using your imagination or finding new solutions to problems, the key output is something original and worthwhile.
Hmm.
And here's the crucial part. It's seen as a vital facet of human development, and it's found in far more places than just traditional art forms. Everyone possesses this ability. It's inherent.
Everyone. That's a big claim.
It is, but think about it this way. There's a useful model called the 4C model of creativity that helps show the spectrum. So first, you have mini C. This is about transformative learning, those aha moments, personally meaningful interpretations of experiences, like when you suddenly grasp a concept in a new way.
Okay, like a personal insight.
Exactly. Then there's little c. This is your everyday problem-solving and creative expression. Things like figuring out a new way to organize your calendar, like you mentioned, or even putting together a surprisingly delicious meal from leftovers. It's creativity in daily life.
Right, the practical stuff.
Then Pro C. This refers to professional creativity. People who use creativity in their jobs, their vocations, even if they aren't famous artists or anything. Designers, engineers, teachers.
Got it.
And finally, there's Big C. This is the kind of creativity we usually think of the stuff considered truly great in a field, often leading to a historic transformation. Einstein, Picasso, that level.
Yeah, game changers.
Right. But the revelation here, the really empowering part, is focusing on little c. By embracing your everyday problem-solving and personal insights, you're not just being practical, you're actively building the mental muscle, the creative muscle, that can potentially lead to those Pro-C or even Big C breakthroughs down the line.
Ah, so it makes it approachable.
Exactly. It fundamentally shifts creativity from this elusive gift for the few to an everyday practice accessible to absolutely everyone.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. We often imagine creativity needs, wide open fields of possibilities, total freedom. But what if the very things we try to avoid, like boredom or limitations, are actually powerful fuel for our creative fire? I know I'm guilty of grabbing my phone the second there's a lull, trying to avoid boredom at all costs.
It's a very common impulse in our always-on world, but one of our sources makes a really strong point that this constant smartphone use is actually potentially killing creativity, precisely because it eliminates downtime and boredom. Think about this statistic. Over an average 30-year span, people waste something like 9 years just scrolling and swiping on their devices.
9 years. Wow.
Yeah. That's a huge amount of lost time that could otherwise be dedicated to imaginative thought, to just letting the mind wander. And the surprising truth, or maybe not so surprising if you think back, is that boredom isn't a lack of imagination at all. It's often the opposite. It's described as a catalyst, a motivating force, even a teacher. It provides direct access to the imaginative mind.
How so?
Well, think back to childhood. When you were truly deeply bored, what happened? You'd build elaborate forts out of blankets or make up fantastical plays, invent entire worlds in your head. Those Stranger Things childhoods, as one source puts it, are exactly what happens when boredom creates a kind of vacuum that curiosity and creativity then rush in to fill.
Wow, so avoiding boredom is actually a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
It really does flip the script on how I think about downtime. Okay, boredom is this quiet mentor. How does curiosity play into this whole equation? They feel related somehow.
Oh, they absolutely are. Curiosity is more of an active state, though. It's something you often have to seek out or at least choose to follow. Author Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this beautifully. She suggests choosing curiosity over fear, not just once, but habitually and constantly.
Curiosity over fear.
Yeah. She emphasizes that fear, well, just makes life smaller, contracts it.
Yeah.
But curiosity is always accessible. It's not like passion, which can feel huge and maybe elusive. Passion might be this big tower of flame, but curiosity is more like a little tiny clue, a breadcrumb trail, maybe a scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
It's that little whisper that taps on your shoulder. And Gilbert says if you just bother to turn your head even 1/8 of an inch and investigate that little whisper, you've already veered towards creativity. Following that unique curiosity thread, that's what creates a life unique to you. There's a great real-world example. The Irish comedian Tommy Tiernan.
Oh, yeah.
He once improvised entire hour-long stand-up shows. No script, no notes, no idea what he would say next. He just walked out on stage and let curiosity lead the way, responding to the moment.
That takes serious guts.
It really does. And today, he hosts a highly successful TV interview show where he doesn't even know who his guest will be until they walk onto the set.
Seriously, how does that even work?
He just trusts his curiosity.
Yeah.
His belief is strip away the script and the shared conversation is always deeper. He relies solely on his curiosity about the other person to drive the entire conversation.
That's incredible, just trusting the moment like that. But, okay, what about limitations? Constraints? Surely those are roadblocks, right? Not pathways to creativity. We usually try to remove constraints to be more creative.
That's the common assumption, isn't it? That freedom equals creativity. But sometimes, an endless open field of possibilities can actually lead to paralysis. You don't know where to start. Conversely, constraints can be incredibly beneficial. You know the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We've seen this throughout history. Isaac Newton developed calculus during a quarantine period. Shakespeare supposedly wrote King Lear during a plague lockdown. Even Dr. Seuss wrote Green Eggs and Ham on a bet that he couldn't write a book using only 50 different words.
Huh. I didn't know that about Dr. Seuss. That's amazing. 50 words.
Exactly. It forced incredible creativity within that type box. Or consider the artist Faith Ringgold. She wanted to create these massive canvases, like many male modernist painters of her time, but she just didn't have the physical space in her home studio.
Okay, a practical constraint.
A very practical one. So she adapted. She started making huge narrative quilts. They could be just as impactful, just as large, but she could roll them up, store them easily, take them to galleries. She thrived because of that limitation, finding a new medium.
So the constraint forced innovation.
Precisely. Playing with limitations, it quite literally stretches your imagination. It helps the brain grow new connections, make unexpected leaps that lead to those aha moments. You can even try this yourself in small ways. Give yourself just 10 seconds to do a drawing. Or put a random colored dot on a blank canvas and challenge yourself to incorporate it meaningfully into whatever you create. See how those constraints force your brain to find new pathways.
Okay, I might actually try that. So if the old ways of thinking about creativity, the genius myth, the need for total freedom, if those are shifting, what does that look like in practice? How do we actually do creativity in this new light? Moving beyond, say, simple brainstorming sessions that often feel a bit, well, stale.
Yeah, traditional brainstorming, while really popular, does have its limitations. One source we looked at even notes that AI can now brainstorm much better than humans in some ways.
Really? How so?
Because AI can generate ideas more randomly, more widely, without the same filters or biases humans have. Plus, group brainstorming can sometimes activate our own fears and hopes, fear of judgment, wanting to impress, which can inadvertently constrain creative flow.
Okay, so what's a better approach for us humans?
Well, one really interesting alternative comes from, believe it or not, the Army University. They swear by something called counterfactual thinking.
Counterfactual thinking. What's that?
In simple terms, it's basically playing the what-if game with reality, systematically. Instead of just trying to solve a problem head-on, you actively imagine alternatives. If only this had happened instead, or what if we approached this from a completely different angle? What if the opposite were true?
Ah, okay. Thinking about alternatives.
Exactly. You're creating alternative realities in your mind. And the interesting thing is this process seems to tap into the more non-logical, even motor regions of the human brain, leading to potentially more impactful, less conventional results. They have this two-step story thinking process built around it, which they estimate has been worth billions in terms of effective military strategy.
Billions. Okay, tell me more.
So the first step is essentially a quick creativity check. You rank your newly imagined what-if options. How novel and impactful are they? Maybe on a scale of 0 to 10, where 8, 10 is high innovation.
Right. Filter for the really creative ideas.
Then the second step is a crucial reality check. How stable or uncertain is your current operational environment? Low, moderate, high. This smart pairing helps you filter out biases, both fear and overconfidence, and figure out which bold, innovative ideas are genuinely ready for action in the current context, rather than just, letting fear shut down good ideas or pursuing wild fantasies inappropriately.
That makes sense, matching the idea to the reality. But beyond methods, what makes an idea truly creative if it's not about being entirely new, like you said before?
That's a great question. And a key takeaway here is that it really boils down to interpretation, not pure originality. As one creator put it, every story has already been told. There are maybe only a handful of basic plots in existence when you really break it down.
Right, the hero's journey, tragedy, comedy.
Exactly. The true key, the creative spark, lies in your interpretation, how you frame it, how you feel it, how you structure those existing ideas or elements.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about music. Beethoven's Für Elise. The melody feels almost inevitable now, right? Like it always existed. But it's his unique interpretation, his phrasing, his choices that makes it art. Or consider film. Director Alfonso Cuarón talked about how gravity didn't just come from a cool sci-fi concept. It came from his deeply personal feeling at the time of being broken, adrift, falling into a void after personal difficulties.
Ah, so the feeling came first.
Yes. Similarly, Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver almost as therapy. He channels his own feelings of being broke, alone, and disconnected in New York City into the metaphor of Travis Bickle's character. And Neil Blomkamp's District 9, that sci-fi film about aliens living in slums in Johannesburg. It was so powerful because he filtered his lived experiences growing up during apartheid into it. It wasn't just about aliens. It was about segregation, prejudice, the feeling of being an outsider. It felt real because it was real on an emotional level for him.
That personal connection makes all the difference.
It really does. Even reinterpretation of existing works can be incredibly creative. Look at Park Chan-wook's film Old Boy. It's based on a Japanese manga. But he reinterpreted it fundamentally. He flipped the core question. The manga asks, why was he locked up for all those years? The film asks, why was he let go now? That shift added entirely new layers of cultural and emotional depth.
Interesting twist.
Or Sergio Leone, taking Kurosawa's samurai film Yojimbo and transforming it into A Fistful of Dollars.
Yeah.
He didn't just remake it. He created whole new cinematic language. The slow pacing, the extreme close-ups, the use of music, the silence. He invented the spaghetti western genre through pure interpretation.
Right. Right. The style became the substance in a way.
Exactly. And this brings us to a fascinating insight from neuroscience. Does the brain make these big jumps when being creative, or is it more like small steps?
What does the science say?
The science suggests the brain only ever takes small steps. Always. Think of it like building with Legos. You're always adding just one small brick at a time. But eventually, those small steps can build a magnificent castle.
Okay.
So what appears as a big jump to an outside observer is actually just the next logical step for the creator within their own unique mental landscape. Every one of us operates within a unique space of possibility. Think of it like your personal mental sandbox. It's shaped by everything you've ever experienced, learned, assumed, felt.
Our own internal world.
Precisely. Creativity, in this sense, isn't about pulling massive leaps out of thin air. It's more about questioning and identifying your own assumptions, the boundaries of your current sandbox. By doing that, you change your personal space of possibility, which then naturally opens up new logical small steps that weren't visible before.
That's actually really encouraging. It makes it feel less daunting. So if creativity is about these small, iterative steps within our unique perspective, how do we actively nurture this, both within ourselves and maybe across our teams or organizations? Where do we even begin?
Well, starting individually, Elizabeth Gilbert, again, has a really powerful, practical philosophy.
Yeah.
If you want to be a writer, then write. Simple as that. It's about consistency, commitment. Even if it's just stealing 10 minutes a day, you just have to show up. Her mother actually taught her this phrase, done is better than good.
Done is better than good. I like that.
Right. Finishing an imperfect novel or project or whatever it is far, far better than leaving a potentially perfect one incomplete, gathering dust in a drawer. And this is a really crucial point because apparently young women, for instance, often hold back their creative work, their jewels, because they fear it's not perfect yet. This contrasts sometimes with men's maybe entitlement, as Gilbert puts it, to just put themselves and their work out there, even if it's not perfectly polished.
That's a really interesting observation on gender dynamics there.
It is. Beyond that core idea of consistency, you can actively cultivate creativity in lots of ways. Maintain a journal, maybe. Change your environment. Just working in a different room can sometimes help. Read widely across different genres and topics. Practicing creative exercises like that 10-second drawing or playing music, even if you're not good at it, can enhance imaginative thinking. And it's incredibly helpful to meet new people, especially from different fields or backgrounds. They bring fresh perspectives that can shake up your own thinking. And crucially, you have to be willing to take risks and embrace failure. Failure isn't the opposite of creativity. It's often a vital part of the process.
Learning from mistakes.
Exactly. And if you find yourself feeling stuck, sometimes working with a coach or a mentor can help you refocus, get curious about your own experiences again, and maybe see things in a new light. Think about someone like the interior designer Kelly Wearstler. Her approach is all about actively cultivating curiosity. She talks about constantly seeking out new things she can fall in love with, a new material, an incredible creation she sees in a gallery, a pattern in nature. She says her eye was educated from a very young age by going to flea markets, just constantly exploring, looking, absorbing.
So it's an active pursuit.
Very active. For her, creativity comes from within, from your soul, your unique stylistic voice. And while looking at others' work, replication can inform creativity, the true spark has to be internal, personal.
That's fantastic advice for individuals looking to find or rekindle their own spark. But let's shift gears a bit. What about organizations? If businesses, as you suggested, are sometimes inadvertently stifling creativity, what are the first steps leaders can take to maybe unshackle their teams and foster this curiosity?
Such a critical question because ultimately organizational effectiveness, relevance, survival even, is largely dependent on workforce creativity. Without it, businesses just stagnate and become irrelevant. Yet so many organizations unintentionally create these handcuffs that stifle curiosity. Things like rigid command and control structures, maybe excessive bureaucracy, layers of approval, and leaders who focus solely on execution, on hitting targets, rather than also fostering discovery and learning. There was a survey that found something like 2 out of 3 workers face barriers to simply asking questions at work.
2 out of 3, that's huge. So people feel they can't even ask why.
Often, yeah. Or they feel it's risky or pointless. So leaders have to actively create an open, collaborative environment, one that genuinely encourages innovation and, yes, risk-taking. This means, first off, creating a psychologically safe space for questions. Think about it. A 4-year-old asks something like 300 questions a day.
Wow.
But that number plummets by middle school. Why? Because asking questions starts to feel unsafe or unwelcome. Leaders need to be really present, physically and intellectually, during discussions. They need to model curiosity themselves to encourage that open dialogue. And furthermore, they need to actively encourage and even reward sensible risk-taking. Businesses that punish employees for experiments that don't pan out, well, they limit their own potential dramatically. Whereas high employee engagement, which is often fostered by allowing risk-taking, can lead to something like a 202% higher performance.
202%, that's a massive difference.
It really is. Leaders also need to become curious learners themselves, rather than defenders of the status quo. It's easy to hide behind process or blame external factors. The product is not right. The price is too high when results aren't coming. But research shows that how salespeople engage customers is vastly more important for loyalty. It accounts for something like 53% compared to the actual product of 19%, or even the price 9%.
Really? 53% on the interaction.
Yeah. So leaders should be intensely curious about how their teams can engage more effectively, rather than just pushing for more calls or faster execution. And this also brings up the evolving role of AI, which we touched on with brainstorming.
Right. How does AI fit into organizational creativity?
Well, Kelly Wearstler, the designer, she's actually super bullish on AI in her field. She doesn't see it as a threat. She finds it helps generate initial ideas, assists with practical tasks like Photoshop, and significantly increases efficiency. Her studio can actually take on more projects, and her team gains more free time for deeper creative thinking because AI handles some of the grunt work.
Interesting. So it's a tool, not a replacement.
Exactly. She views it almost like a junior designer, or maybe a new creative spirit in the studio, something that enhances human creativity, frees up human capacity, rather than replacing it wholesale.
That's a much more optimistic take than you sometimes hear. Okay, so we've talked art, history, business, neuroscience. But beyond all that, how does creativity weave into the very fabric of our everyday lives? And maybe even our most profound experiences, like facing grief. This feels like an entirely different dimension of creativity we haven't quite touched yet.
It really is. And maybe it's the most fundamental dimension. Creativity, at its core, can be seen as the ability to find a balance, to, as one source beautifully put it, create a bridge between your need for meaning and your emotions. You experience it in those moments of pure connection, flow states, when you do something you love and completely lose track of time. Maybe it's sitting quietly in a park, maybe it's writing, maybe playing music, maybe cooking.
Getting lost in the moment.
Exactly. The secret seems to be just allowing yourself to get lost, letting your intuition be your guide, not overthinking it. It's intriguing to consider that creativity might be both the question and the answer. It's this unique human ability to sort of bend reality, create our own timelines, find true connections where maybe none seemed possible before. And this ability, this creative muscle, extends even to navigating our most challenging experiences. Elizabeth Gilbert, again, shares a deeply personal account of grieving her partner, Raya Elias. She called navigating that grief the single greatest creative challenge of her entire life.
Wow. A creative challenge. How does she frame it that way?
Well, she found that some emotions were just too big for words or conscious thought. She actually turned to dance, just moving her body, as a way to release and process something that couldn't be expressed otherwise, tapping into a different kind of intelligence, maybe. And more broadly, in the face of that immense loss, she reframed the whole experience of grief not as an ending, but as a kind of cosmic riddle.
A riddle.
Yeah. The riddle was, how do I create safety for myself?
Yeah.
How do I feel seen and connected in a world that no longer contains this person I love so deeply? Her ongoing creative adventure, as she calls it, became saying yes ahead of time to the new one, the new life, the new reality she can only have without her partner, trusting that this new, different life can, in its own way, be just as beautiful as the one she lost.
That's incredibly profound, saying yes to the life that's possible now.
It is.
Yeah.
And to put this in a slightly broader context, she connects this profound experience to a wider philosophy about life itself. Maybe not taking it all quite so seriously, remembering we are all just temporary visitors on Earth, temporary occupants of these bodies.
Yeah.
Maybe that awareness can help us be a bit lighter about our choices,
Mm-hmm.
can make life feel less intimidating, less like a high-stakes performance, and maybe more like a weird, interesting ride that ultimately she doesn't want to miss out on by being paralyzed by fear or grief. It helps us engage with life in all its messiness, rather than just being caught up in endless scrolling or the relentless pursuit of some external achievement.
This deep dive has really transformed my understanding of creativity. We started with that elusive, maybe even intimidating idea of genius.
Yeah.
But we've journeyed far beyond that. It's clearly not some rare, tormented gift for a chosen few, but an accessible, vital, human ability, something that resides potentially in all of us.
Hmm.
We've seen how it's nurtured not just by traditional inspiration, but by embracing curiosity, even boredom, maybe even limitations, and by focusing on our own personal interpretation rather than chasing pure originality, and by being willing to question our deepest assumptions, the edges of our own mental sandbox. And
Exactly.
perhaps most powerfully, we've seen it's a force that can be cultivated in our individual lives, in our organizations, and yeah, even in navigating our deepest sorrows like grief. So thinking about all that, given that creativity seems to be about making those small, logical steps within our own unique space of possibility, and remembering that simple but powerful idea that done is better than good. Maybe the final thought for you listening is this. What assumption, big or small, are you willing to question today? What tiny, maybe imperfect next step could you take towards a new idea, or a different approach, or maybe a deeper connection, simply because it feels like your next logical step?